This is April 6th, Saturday evening, right after the pre-session General Conference. I'm here with my friend John Nicholson and Scott Turley here. And we're going to talk a bit about some Mormon stuff. John and I go back to college days, and we are going to talk about, I just learned today, actually just today, that it's called POX, the Policy of Exclusion, which is basically that policy in 2015 to exclude gay people in all the ways. We'll talk about that a bit. And, I guess we can talk about General Conference too, and we can talk about gay marriage.
I didn't see all the sessions.
That's so. All right. So we can focus most of it on gay marriage. Okay. But anyway, so I guess 2015. Do you remember what happens? Do you remember the details of that policy?
Oh, I thought it was mostly geared towards how we would possibly not baptize children with same-sex couple parents.
Right.
Wasn't that one of the primary directives?
Not until they turn 18.
Not until they turn 18.
And disavow their parents.
And once so they have to one turn 18 and then disavow their parents.
And then also that they'd be considered apostate, the couple.
Okay.
And so I guess just a couple days ago in the leadership conference meeting or whatever, they decided to
reverse that. But it's a little bit confusing to me, and we can talk about it. You got the policy language down? Because my wife was the one who showed it to me through an email saying, hey, they reversed this policy. Right. To what extent, and what is the policy now? And she didn't read it to me.
Well, I guess the policy now is the big news for me is that they will now allow kids to be baptized in advance with parents' permission, even if they were living with gay parents, which I think is significant symbolically. I'm not sure how significant, practically it is, because I'm just not sure how many kids in that situation
really
actually will or because it's going to be largely their parents supporting them, so I'm just not sure how common that is.
Yeah, that's
but I think it's I think it was more symbolic.
But symbolically, it's like, look, we're not going to pursue this policy of exclusion or marginalizing or even demonizing these people as apostate if their kids want to somehow participate in the church in advance in its ordinances. So yeah, I thought, like you, that it was significant in that symbolic way, but I said, unless I know what the language of the official policy is, I don't know what kind of advancement it is beyond that. But I'm hopeful that there'll be many more such advancements. Certainly, there's things we're doing now that would have been unthinkable 10, 15 years ago. I can't imagine. I mean, we just had this big LGBTQ session Sunday school or whatever we call it now, second hour.
In your ward?
In my ward.
You had one?
Yeah, I thought that might have been throughout the region, but maybe not.
It wasn't in my ward.
Okay, we did, and we had a guy speak who, and it's never a guy that's very qualified, but maybe that's by design. They wanted him to kind of plunge into this and see what he really feels about it after he does some research. And he talked a lot about what's Todd Christofferson's brother's book. Right. And he talked a lot about that, and I guess he had a chance to talk to him directly and speak with him on his book tour. I don't know exactly but now that I guess his brother is back in the church, there's a lot of things he's saying by way of helping people understand the LGBTQIA. We had IA, and some people had that. Intersex ally is part of the designation. Okay. And as such, there's a softening of attitudes about a group that's considered in many senses an existential threat to the Mormon worldview, it seems to me, is what a big part of what's always motivating this a pox upon them type of exclusion.
Well, that was
that's kind of been changed a lot in the last several years. So
that's actually kind of interesting, because I kind of feel like you said it's a softening. It's a softening mostly from the Elder Packer view of where he said the biggest threats to the church were feminists, gays, and intellectuals, right?
Well, historians. I never thought as a philosopher I could fit in that, because my stuff was so arcanely phrased that no one could tell if it's supposed or not.
So when you said academics, you were thinking.
I always thought it was historians. I thought that's a typical word with historians.
Okay.
Or what he always called so-called intellectuals, which you could take both ways. You could say, well, if you're a true, faithful intellectual, I have no problem with you. Or all you intellectuals are just so-called intellectuals because whatever intellectualism, it's inferior to what we prophets have to say. You need to bow your knee or whatever.
Yeah, because
But I always thought I could work my way around that. I never had a serious problem with a lot of Elder Packer statements. Even as a personality, I viewed him as divisive.
Right.
And really, there's only 5 general authorities my whole time studying Mormon intellectual history that I always felt that about. J. Reuben Clark, in his chartered course, The Church and Education, which a lot of people think is kind of blasé, but at the time was trying to get the heterodox and leftist heretical Mormons out of CES, because there was a lot of them back in those days.
Back when?
50s, 60s.
Okay.
Sterling McMurrin taught for CES for 7 years. The guy's a total agnostic.
Right.
It wasn't a problem with his immediate supervisors because they felt he was a pretty good guy overall. They kept moving around to keep him one step ahead of the hangman.
Right.
But I could talk about that forever. Well, if you've read his biography, you probably know the main details. But J. Reuben Clark, Joseph Fielding Smith, his anti-science views, the anti-evolutionary views.
Right.
Bruce R. McConkie and his soft racism and Mormon doctrine. And then, Boyd K. Packer, for the reasons you mentioned. And that's about it. You study all the rest of the authorities, and they're either very non-threatening or mildly supportive of a lot of intellectual things you might not think. Well, and that's always been something, a problem with me, because it's like there's only these 5 or 6 authorities in the history of the church that have, really alienated so many people. And I just wish that some people higher ups, David O. McKay, stepped in and said, knock it off, Yeah. Ezra Taft Benson would be the last one, mostly because of his hardline anti-communist stuff. But that would be it, those 5. And it's always bothered me as a guy, amateur historian in intellectual history, that those guys got so much play, and Hubie Brown or other types of more liberal general authorities.
Let me take a pause on this, because
all right.
We're back. I had to pause that for a second because my dog was barking at John here, who she doesn't know, and now she's still barking, but she's outside. Hopefully it's a little softer.
I'm not a dog person. Dogs are
I know. Well, no, she barks at everybody. Anyway, so no, I think what you're saying there was only like 4 prominent people that
5
prominent.
Benson. 5
including Ezra Taft Benson.
Those
Although
5,
he softened and became prophet.
Yeah, but
okay, so 5 prominent people that you had troubles with, but there was a it wasn't just those 5 though, because there was a overarching.
I'm sure a lot of people shared their views, but those.
Well, I guess what I'm mostly concerned though about is the overall thrust of the culture of the church, and I think maybe they were so prominent because they were very influentially influencing the culture of the church.
They were very outspoken. They were public figures. They wrote a lot. They published a lot.
But they were over and above competing voices.
And other weren't featured as prominently, or didn't publish as much, or speak as much, or had as much advocacy among the rank and file. I suppose that people thought Hubie Brown was great and championed his views, but not to the extent.
Well, people don't really remember what he said, especially in comparison to the Bruce R. McConkie.
Yeah, I guess he didn't get as much reiteration as they did, and that's because I think the more conservative and dogmatic voices are stick in people's minds better. It's easy to
but I think
disseminate their
but
views.
Even not even from a memory point of view, I'm talking about from driving how the rank and file Mormon behaved.
Yeah.
And how
I
they thought
believe
about
that correlation appropriate too many of their views.
And how they thought about
curriculum.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. What did you say?
Coordinate curriculum. I mean, if you look, it could be an interesting study, but if you study what are the prophets and authorities quoted the most in LDS lessons and manuals, it would be those people were treated quite prominently. Jeff Benson, Joseph Smith, and Bruce R. McConkie. A lot more than David O. McKay or Kitty Brown, certainly, or Levi Edgar Young. Has anyone even heard of Levi Edgar Young?
Yeah.
Can you even name 2 70s in the history of the church? I bet you can only name 2.
Right.
B.H. Roberts and J. Golden Campbell. I bet that's the only one anyone ever knows. But Levi Edgar Young was a pretty outspoken, more liberal voice and said a lot of interesting things about American Indians, Native Americans, and the whole Waymite stuff that were not considered normative at the time. But not
so I want to pull it back to our central theme, though, because I really don't see a lot of changes in the theology and the basic posturing of the church's position on gay marriage or gay relationships, but there is a general softening in ways that I don't think contradicts any past teaching. I don't think it's just a way that we've kind of treated and reacted to, and that softens.
I agree with that.
Yeah, because we used to, as culturally as well as leadership, it was very much like there's just no place at all if you were gay. Like you basically had
no place, but you basically should probably avoid as much association too with those people.
Yeah, they were disassociated. So then you got that's where reparative therapies and
Green and all that stuff.
And then like where gay people were encouraged to marry opposite gender, and just hope for the best. Hope for the best. And that kind of stuff
that turns out pretty badly.
Right.
How badly that's turned out.
Or back, I'm wondering if you go back far enough though, if many of those relationships had gay people, and then that just kind of they just had unhappy marriages for their lives, and then later on, as divorce became more acceptable, then a lot of them just would divorce, right? And that tends to happen now, is if a gay person marries, I think the divorce rate is quite high.
Yeah.
So I don't think anymore. What's that?
Stand to reason.
Yes, and so now, I don't think the church encourages that officially. So, I don't know if you want to talk to that.
I don't know if we disagree enough to have a conversation. Yeah, you're right. I agree.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, so in terms of this policy in 2015, in some sense, it kind of made sense to me, logical sense that the church would do it. In terms of considering people who entered gay marriage legal, because it happened in response to the Supreme Court legalizing marriage, right? Then the legalizing gay marriage, yes. and then they said, okay, anybody who does that, that's an apostate act. Mm-hmm. Do you see that as that seems like a logical step given our theology? Do you agree or disagree with that?
What? Anyone who agrees with the legalization of gay marriage is an apostate. Any Mormon that agrees?
Or no, what I'm saying is anybody who actually enters a gay marriage. A legal gay marriage is.
What's the handbook of instructions say? I guess that's the language still on it. That if someone thinks that this should be normalized in any way, depending on how a bishop reads the handbook, that could be interpreted as apostasy. So if I were gay and I brought my fiancé boyfriend to church,
right?
And if I was in San Francisco or Boston, maybe nothing happens to me. But if I'm in Idaho,
right?
I guess that bishop could.
Yeah, because I think even with
call summary bishop's court or whatever, do whatever he wants.
I think even with the reversal of this,
now I would think he'd be discouraged, perhaps, depending on the higher council, from taking unilateral action, but. That's probably the language that's on the books still. That's how I understand from my former friends. They've been former bishops recently.
Right.
So.
Okay. But I think actually the actual going as far as saying that the children of gay people are not eligible for baptism, that was pretty severe.
Yeah. You seem to react strongly. I thought it was just a legal deniability thing. You just don't want to get in between a child and parents. Just, let it pass until you're of age. I remember my own wife, who I have a stepdaughter. She had a child with by this man who left her, and we were going to have Elizabeth sealed to us, but there was some concern that we ought to at least let the father know. And my wife was saying, no, he has no business whatsoever. If you're going to make me do that, then just forget it. I have no intention of doing that. I don't see why I have to do that. We'll just delay the whole sealing if that's what we have to do. And they were very unsettled. They weren't sure what to do. The bishop wasn't sure what to do, and it went back and forth, and finally they basically just said, and they made a fiat decision. Okay, don't worry about it. You want to get sealed, we'll. So I wonder how many gray areas there are like that, where the language in the handbook is sufficiently open-ended or even non-existent,
right?
That they have to think on the fly,
right?
And I hope eventually that's what they'll do, case by case, for all of these children of gay couples, because it's a very case by case personal thing, and the judgment that has to be made is very unique, I'm sure. And it should be unique in every case, all the factors that could be involved.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's, you disagree with this, but the church is just so invested in heterosexual union, and it's not even the reproduction and family. It's the symbolic nature of that in almost mystical sense, although we never use that language.
Right.
And because of that, this whole normalization of, and again, you watch television, it's becoming thoroughly normalized in society, same-sex relationships, whatever that may be good or bad. I'm bracketing that. It's just that's viewed as something that's diluting to society from the LDS perspective, and we want to kind of hold a line. But how are we going to hold it? Where are we going to draw it? Those things are under, I think, increased negotiation, whereas they weren't so much at all.
Right. So that's the significance.
So that's significant. So the fact that we are negotiating, but I mean, we practice polygamy and all sorts of things in the 19th century. It just
not to tease out there. Yeah. So I think that to me, I think the significance of the policy of exclusions reversal is, one, it shows a softening, and that as well as with other things that come out. Mm-hmm. Like they've actually worked with the church in Utah has worked with politicians to have a lot more compassionate laws on the books and such.
On books and far as health care.
Right. Yeah.
And then that I thought the church was always going to go that way.
Right.
The domestic part would always pursue that eventually. But yeah, this is something, a new type of softening, but where it's going to lead from here.
Well, that's not my question. But so it's both a softening, a willingness to work, like an open door. So like they've loosened the language to allow more allow bishops to have more discretion in gray areas.
Right.
And I'm trying to think. Yeah. But without really changing the theology.
Yeah.
But the real question is, I think, how much more open can they be to accommodating gay people, all the way up to and potentially including theological changes? And that's kind of what we had talked about yesterday.
Yeah,
right?
and that's when I always go back to what's fundamental, and that's Mormon cosmology, the Mormon worldview. And even that sounds kind of like a universal view, the Mormon cosmology on the nature of man. What is the right homosexual etiology in the context of the vast and often ponderous nature of Mormon cosmology, like the only Christian religion that believes that man is not ultimately the creation of God.
Right.
There's some elements of man's selfhood, intelligent, whatever. There's not a real great, brilliant taxonomy of all those things in Scriptures. There's various things you point to, but the philosophers of course agree about the extent of those meanings go on forever. But that is the key thing about our theology is unique. And what does that mean for the origin of same-sex attraction?
Or just sexual attraction to begin with. Yeah, like what is sexual attraction anyway? Is it just a characteristic of this life only, or does it persist?
Well,
did we have
Christians would say yes. Christians would
Christians
say it's completely overcome in eternal bliss. What do you mean, sex and everything? But Mormons, oh no, is the eternal family, is the spiritual procreation of the woman.
But that's all speculative.
Yeah, but that is a big part. It makes the rest of the Christian world go cross-eyed.
Right.
I mean, I try to explain eternal lives and celestial glory and exaltation to an evangelical colleague of me at the Christian university I work at. And first of all, he just thought it was bizarre. The second thing, he thought it sounds exhausting. You have to repeat the karmic cycle of raising children your whole life. Yeah. Don't you get to rest and have eternal glory and bliss? why on earth would anyone have seen it? If you call that celestial glory, I think that's definitely a lower glory, actually. What I'm doing is probably the high. What I think is a celestial glory is real celestial glory.
Yeah.
And to him, it was just an Edenic state, knowing your family,
Right.
and some sort of static equilibrium state where you have memories, and then glorifying God in a
Well, because the idea of eternal growth is actually kind of, this is off the subject, but I just want to explore it because it's interesting. The idea of eternal growth is kind of stressful, actually.
Yeah.
Because
even
like it's really stressful to grow.
So
right?
why would you want it for all eternity?
Because it's painful, stressful. It's like I don't know.
I get the idea it's fulfilling, though.
It's fulfilling
in some way the others are not.
Right.
And I, for one, will say, yeah, I guess I can get that, and I believe
Right.
that, and I'll convert to evangelicalism, even though I got many opportunities. And I can stay an elder. I can go on as an elder, too.
Okay.
I got all these other opportunities because of all the associates I've built up over working for the college I'm at. But yeah, it still seems very stressful. It seems like you might, perhaps after several millennia, want to opt out of it.
Who knows? Who knows, right?
And, this one thing you did miss, Charles Randall Paul, he's a fixture, the society we go to. And he deals with high stakes interreligious diplomacy, trying to negotiate between Muslims and Jews not to kill each other. So those high stakes, what he does, and he recounted an incident where he was talking to a Buddhist colleague of him, and he also laid out Mormon cosmology and all this interesting facets, and the guy was just totally unmoved, going, so what?
Yeah.
You want that? Yeah, sure, that's probably out there. We got that. We got all that in Buddhism.
Yeah.
But eventually, you will understand you want nirvana, and you want to have a cessation of all desire.
Right.
And that means cessation of all human relationships of any kind. And it takes you billions of years, all right. But eventually, you just want to annihilate your consciousness, because that's the ultimate, not this eternal life stuff. This is a lower level, but it's in our cosmology too. There's nothing special about Mormon belief.
Well, okay, let's get back to
the
eternal nature, because it actually came up in one of the General Conference talks today. I think it was the one. Did you see the Saturday afternoon session?
Part of it.
I think it was the one about where gay marriage was talked about.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I don't remember the context, but he did talk about the eternal nature of our souls.
Okay.
Which I do think. So you're saying there's some room there potentially for some theological shifts in the way we. Because I think it all
I'm
comes
wondering
down.
if what Joseph Smith might have ended up teaching if you lived in there 40 years. I always wondered that. And
Yeah, because
there's so many things bringing me misunderstood. Law of adoption, all this stuff they did for 40 years, sending people to apostles.
Right.
They're just.
Because Joseph Smith was sealing himself to other men, like the brotherhood kind of sealed.
Yeah, well, the idea is that you be exalted, you had to be sealed the apostolate. That was kind of the understanding at the time.
Right.
And then clarification was received, and it's like, no, we got it wrong. I'm sorry. And the thing is, if that happened today, he would just freak out. Well, what is truth? You guys are really confused, evidently. You don't know what you're doing. Whereas back in the 1890s, he said, okay, finally got it right, because this was being kind of stupid. I'm glad. Okay. I mean, they just took it with a grain of salt. I don't know, because it was the 19th century, and they're just worried about irrigating. But they seem the doctrinal changes, people were able to just kind of handle the fallibility of prophets pretty easily. Whereas now, well, we can go on all day about this, but it just seems like if major theological changes were to happen, people would freak out. I mean,
they have happened.
They have happened. Yeah.
I mean, even recently,
we have lost, I suppose, people.
Yeah.
Well, they've been administrative. I mean, just changing the meeting structures.
Well, priesthood ban on blacks.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest one.
And that wasn't that long ago, right?
Well, for us, it's not. But
and
for
then,
a lot of people, it's like, what? Oh, 78, ancient history.
but they have disavowed the reasons that they used for it, too.
Yeah.
And
that was on the website, although within a matter of weeks it was buried. It's
well, I mean, those gospel topic essays dive into...
I remember Arm and Mouth, how to explain priesthood ban without looking like an idiot. It seemed like a lot of his essays were some of the source material they had for those.
Okay, well, anyway,
let me
get back on.
All right. No, you can edit this, right?
No, I can actually, but I want to. So I think so. There's 2 points here.
Mm-hmm.
How easily can the church make major theological shifts?
Not easily.
And also, because I kind of think
in theory easily, in practice.
Well, I
not
think
so
this
much.
this pox reversal. That's one of the most significant parts of it for me. Was that it came out in 2015? Was it 15?
Was it? You tell me.
And now it's like
4 years later.
Oh, it is November 2015, so almost 2016.
Yeah.
So basically, 3 years later, they reverse it. Which and after a lot of vocal opposition and many people leaving the church over it.
Yeah.
And they won't necessarily admit that was the reason, but it's hard to say that it didn't.
Starting Dano McKay, I mean, different apostles have different temperaments and presidents, but it seemed pretty clear, like President McKay, when I studied a lot of his life, if there was a lot of grassroots, opposition, he was very sensitive to that. He did not like that.
So it seemed, So it seems like President Nelson is also
might be in that.
He's been around for quite a long time, and you were saying he's a substantive figure, just a substantive.
I just can't. He's a world-class surgeon who's been around the world. I guess he's born in Utah, but he wasn't raised. I mean, my bishop was also a surgeon. My bishop, when I was back from my mission, who was also a returned mission president, a surgeon, actually looks almost like Russell Nelson's brother. I mean, they look a lot alike. Same hairline, same facial features, and he lived in San Antonio, but he also had a house in the French Riviera. I mean, I don't get the feeling that that the whole Utah culture is that big a part of him anymore.
Right.
And he's sensitive to what it means to be a leader of global faith with political cultures that are far more leftist than the rest of the world in the United States.
Right.
So that has to have made a feeling. He's been there. He's lived in those cultures.
Because it's just interesting that as soon as he becomes prophet, he just starts changing things.
Yeah.
I've probably been on deck for a
long
time.
I mean, the whole people were saying, "Oh, there's a major change." It's like they've been talking about getting rid of Sunday school since the '60s. I mean,
that's a pretty significant change.
Yeah,
it's not a theological change.
It's administrative change, but he pulls a trigger, and he's not afraid. He may do. I'm hoping testimony meetings next because I've always thought it was an embarrassment.
I actually like testimony meetings.
I hate testimony.
Yeah.
We can do that for another time. I'll give you all the reasons I don't like fast and testimony.
We can have a debate about it. No, I don't. I mean, I'm not sure how long he'll be prophet, but he doesn't have a lot of time.
He looked a lot older to me today. I was shocked. I missed a couple conferences, and all of a sudden he seemed so much more wrinkled and aged.
Yeah. Because
he seems so much younger. Maybe it's just because they have a very young picture of him out in our Sunday school.
Okay.
And he looked, I realized he's younger than me there.
Well, he's in his 90s.
So now, he's older. But
so, he's
a healthcare professional. He takes good care of himself. So he can hold on.
Yeah, maybe.
And he's reputed to have the highest energy level of any apostle in recent memory. I mean, he pursued the most strenuous program in his specialty in surgery. And while he was state president and all that, while he had 10 kids or something.
Right. Yeah.
Just this Herculean, and that's my Uncle Bishop Hassel, my surgeon bishop back in San Antonio. He's the same guy. Guy survived on 3 or 4 hours of sleep.
Yeah. So do you? So I mean, I guess I don't. I definitely could see softening, and I think that will continue.
Yeah, it should continue.
But I'm not sure actually making a theological shift. So I think
there's not going to be a gay revelation law in 1978.
It could happen. It just seems like we're a long ways away from
something. And what the substance of it will be.
Yeah. But I do think there's a lot of room for softening, just allowing gay people to be in participating members of the ward, and not just single gay people, but coupled.
Yeah, people. And I remember talking with I can't remember what Kimball it was. It was one of Spencer Kimball's sons who was on the Sunstone board, and he gave a talk about gay members of fellowship in the church, and he kind of outlined a third way alternative. The idea was them being clerks and things like that, which, having been a clerk most of my experience in the church, I figured that would be really a good thing.
I'm not sure why that's
well, clerks is just you don't teach anyone. and you're not really performing ordinance work. You're just doing the nuts and bolts record keeping that has to be done with any sort of large organization.
Well, I think even before you get there, you'd have to not excommunicate them.
Yeah. Well, do they automatically?
Well, if they're in
disfellowship or some sort of
if they're in
probation,
it
seems like the bishop still has discretion there.
Yeah, and
a lot of probably would. You're right, but I think there's many that would not. Some sort of disfellowship, probation, something like that.
But I think really legalizing gay marriages, is
putting bishops in kind of a bind, because if they're actually married
legally, I don't know how you respond to that, given our current theology and practice and beliefs.
Yeah, good question. I'm not sure how. It would seem to be some latitude for bishops to respond in different ways, but
yeah. So if they chose not to excommunicate them, allow them. But even if they did, but allow them to participate. So even if they were excommunicated, but they were welcome in as members of the Word family, or if they didn't, even better, they didn't excommunicate them and allow them some participation. That's predated the clerk possibilities.
Clerkdom,
But you know what? Clerk is not something. That's not like we'll give the temple. People without temple recommends this is a calling for them. That's not how it is. You actually have to have a temple recommend.
Do you? For clerk?
Yeah.
I guess I have.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm wondering how that.
So it's not like those are. Those are like, those aren't like second tier callings, right?
Okay. I guess I should feel better since I've always been blessed with being a clerk. Although my wife is increasingly, ambivalent about being a recommend holder, because she'd like to use that tithing money in other ways sometimes. And she gets so much out of some of the other things she's involved with.
Yeah. So
I'm wondering. I know other people on my board, and I'm like you, who have spouses for whatever reason, often polygamy, but no longer really want to pay tithing.
Yeah.
And they have to make kind of weird decisions with their spouses who want to still be recommend holders.
Right.
It becomes kind of difficult.
Right.
And I may be heading for something like that myself. So
interesting.
Maybe it won't be a clerk much longer. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't know. There could be. That could be one of those gray area kind of things.
But I never thought a clerk had to be a recommend holder.
It depends. I don't know. That's my understanding. Because the ward clerk is actually involved in disciplinary councils.
Yeah. Well, then I would say
I mean,
maybe the ward clerk.
Maybe the assistant clerks is different.
Because our ward clerk is almost, I think, the operational brains of the whole state.
Right.
They depend on him to get through audits and everything.
Right. So. Yeah. Anyway, maybe we've tapped out on this issue. Do you have anything more?
No, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for increased change, increased softening, increased outreach, increased inclusion opportunities, and increased revelation, light knowledge about, like you said, what is sexual attraction theologically anyway in our cosmology.
Right.
I really, those are the questions that really, I get tired of going to church and talking about things I've heard millions of times. It's sometimes hard for me to listen to general conference, and I'm going, how many times am I going to say covenant path this year? I mean, seriously?
Well, no. So before we go there, that triggered a thought. Elder Bednar got a lot of heat for saying that you're not a gay person is not. I don't remember the exact words, but that's not a valid identifying
that goes back
marker.
to Boyd Packer.
But there is something.
Call it an adjective, not a noun.
But it has some
It's not a rigid designator. It's being philosophical.
No, but that's an important point in terms of the fact that if we believe that we're not created by God,
we're not ultimately created by God.
Created by God.
Not all our elements of our selfhood are created by God. Some are uncreated.
Right. So there's some essence of our identity.
Yeah.
That is eternal.
Yeah. Whatever.
And does that include sexual attraction? Maybe we're not sexually attracted in the pre-existence, but there's some underlying.
Well, Joseph said to Brigham Young, if you could reel everything he learned in his visions, people would seek his blood. What? Could it have something to do with things like that? They were pretty homophobic in the 19th century.
I don't know.
I don't know,
but that's...
It should be just an open question. I just want Mormons to be more open. That Mormon, we don't know.
That's what I'm saying. It's all speculative. It's all speculative.
But Mormons aren't speculative. They get very dogmatic about that.
Yeah.
I'm saying just understand that to the extent you're extending it, you're being speculative.
Yeah.
Because you don't know either.
No, yeah, it's right.
And that's kind of like what Brigham Young always said to Orson Pratt. Well, Orson, you know more than God knows, right. With all your speculative metaphysics. You know, right. I'm just saying it's a possibility. Speculation on all different sides, and it's all speculation. So for you to come down dogmatically saying this, why would God do that? I don't know. Maybe God didn't do that. Something else explains it.
Yeah.
I get tired of apostles like Bednar and Packer. What I see is Packer and Bednar's a neo-Packer.
Yeah, I don't know.
But hopefully cooler minds are prevailing. The president's, I don't know, what do you call it, anti-proceduralism. I just gave a presentation on the Society of Mormon Philosophers and Theologians on what I think is essentialism versus proceduralism and Mormonism, belief and practice. And I look at Nelson as trying to pare down the proceduralism to keep it from dominating,
right.
to wrestle it down, to realize we need some,
right.
we don't need as much,
and
it needs to serve the right purposes, not itself. You know.
Okay.
So that's probably a good place to end.
And on game. Well, okay, but
you have some final thoughts.
Do you have? Well, I guess. Do you have any thoughts on General Conference so far? The 2 sessions.
I really sometimes I avoid it. I read it more now, so I get the footnotes, have a more reflective and positive experience. Because if I hear something that's not well formulated or that's boring, I get critical and angry and just dismissive, and I know that's a bad attitude to get into. When I was hearing Packer and Holland, and I usually like what they say, but they're still such pietists, you know, and I'm no longer a pietist in my
What do you mean by pietist?
Well, I guess this comes from a book I read by Jack Hayford. He's a well-known Pentecostal theologian and pastoral leader. And he gave a pretty critical study of his own faith denomination and the build of Pentecostalism and calls out some of the problems it's had. And he said that the biggest tensions are always perpetually between the activist and the pietist. And I always used to think about Warren like, conservative, liberal, and all this type of stuff. But when he started describing by pietist and activist, I went, that's better. That's a better way of understanding the social change from the feminists and with the priesthood to the people like Boyd K. Packer. It's an activist pietist thing. It's different priorities of what you think the church ought to be doing and protecting and what are the more sacred, important. And it's not that either one's wrong. It's just the priority. Is it more pietistic? What you think of the sacred doctrines and rituals and programs or institutional aspects of the community, or are they externally focused on trying to make the world better? Now, the church does both, but you almost see one set of people more focused on one than the other. And it's a matter of attitude.
You definitely need both.
And rather than thinking it's this versus this, it's this and this in kind of a dynamic tension. And when I read the Hayford book, it's like, oh my gosh, we need to talk about our faith in these terms too. And for me, the constant pietistic things, and I got to go to sacrament meeting and get real pious about the meetings and ordinances that I've done thousands of times by now, though. I mean, is hearing more sacramental prayers that I've heard thousands of times making me a better person? I suppose, depending on intentionality, but that's the nature of it, not me just being there in a meeting, hearing a prayer. A lot of that's focused because I guess I work in evangelical, interdenominational Christian institution, which kind of eschews the value of sacraments. They don't think they're valuable particularly at all. You know, what matters is the grace. Now, can sacraments serve grace? Yeah, sure, but not essentially so. You know, it's the Holy Spirit, it's the Christ-like life. Same we of course emphasize as well, but we always feel like there's something so important that you got to get that proceduralism in with those ordinances. Necessity of ordinances, and the necessity of ordinances is something that's another thing we have a topical discussion on because I'm less and less convinced about how necessary they are. Sometimes.
So that's a long way of saying that you tend to avoid. You're moving out of the camera. Maybe you don't want to be there.
No, sorry.
But maybe but that's
I was never here.
That's a long way of saying that you don't watch General Conference talks because you don't want to get angry about them.
Yeah, I don't want to be disappointed. I'm never disappointed when I read them.
You want more activism.
I want more depth. I don't want to hear the same buzzwords 1,000 times.
Well, you said there's you talk about the two piousness or activism.
The pious and the
but when you
activist.
talk about depth, that could be in both.
Yeah,
sides. You're saying it's not only piousness; it's shallow. It's shallow piousness.
And Holland's better at that than most people. But in this talk, he really wasn't. That's kind of
the talk
disappointing.
today.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it was all about get the church on.
Get the church on time.
And we're the right
Unless
place.
you're a single butterfly, kids, I understand. And he's great. I always like the compassionate side, the broken things, the men. That's his stick, and it's great. He's good at it. And that's why people come see him in droves, where they wouldn't see other people.
Now I see why you're going off on this. Like,
yeah, but it's kind of like really.
Supplements.
I gotta. If that most holy orange. Yeah, it was a lot more holier when you have like the ritzy stuff that Catholics do. I guess I'm going through a severe case of a spiritual envy, holy envy for other religions. Like I knew a guy who he did like the sacrament. He liked it with incense, so he'd go to Greek Orthodox churches. I mean, where there's some sort of, I don't know, flavor that makes it a little bit more. The sanctification is saying ours is such low church Protestantism, really low. I mean,
but we have a little more ceremony than some of the low church.
With the temple, but week to week in the meeting houses, it's no different than Methodism. I don't think.
Okay.
I mean, it's just Methodism on steroids. We're the hyper-organized church. I mean, I remember reading an article about management saying, well, the Harvard Business School curriculum was ever religion, it would be Mormonism.
But we're trying to emphasize that one part of our religious services that is a little more ceremonial, because we're really trying to. That's where Elder Holland's talk was all about. Was really trying to emphasize that that sacrament.
Yeah, and that's fine.
It's a very kind of simple.
Yeah,
it's not nearly as like
it's not
complex
like
or ornate.
Or there's not.
Yeah, it's very. So a lot of this.
We do with 11-year-old kids.
A lot of the stuff we do is very amateurish.
Yeah,
by design.
Yeah,
like. It seems like people. We don't even like train anybody. We just say go and do it and see what happens. So
to other people, more sophisticated churches, it's kind of go. This is Mormon. Yeah, Mormon worship is amateur hour. It's like which it's problematic when you bring investigators, especially the fast and testimony meeting. Which it has value, but I'd like to outsource it. I just don't want to see that stuff graded every month for everybody, because 90% it's therapy. A lot of it's just bad doctrinal teaching by people who are not trained to speak well. And
we talked about testimonies today. I don't remember. They talked about oh no, it was Ballard, right?
Did he?
Ballard? Okay. He talked about simplifying, kind of what you were talking about earlier about simplifying the church. Yeah. And then he talked about simplifying your testimonies. So you just like keep them based on core principles.
But then they're just redundant. Why even have them? Another church is true. The Book of Mormon is true. Both is possible. Wow, I never heard that. Do I need to hear that there 2,000 times the rest of my life? Because I don't think I do.
Well, no, he talked about that. He said you should read his talk because he talked about.
Maybe we were like minds on that.
He talked about simplifying and saying it over and over again. Like he actually said, redundancy is the point. I mean, that's how I got. That's what I got from it. Yeah, because like. You just need to like nail it down into the bottom of your soul.
What's the utility of redundancy then? You got to get philosophical explanation for that, because I'm starting to not see it.
Well, I can see it. I don't know. Like I just can see in my own life, like because
I'm not through the
I grew up in Mormonism, and these things were just like redundantly applied into me week after week after week after week. Like I can't shake it anymore. It's like now they like burn into my DNA, right?
But isn't this work done now, or will somehow the effect wear off if for about 10 years you don't get that redundancy?
Well, the thing is, I just keep going now. It's like because I can't.
Am I going to have to do this for all of eternity? I'm hoping past those testimonies do not exist in this list.
Well, that may not be true. I'm just saying, like, I just can't imagine my life stopping at this point. Like they've really just got me. So I think I've heard somebody talking about like
breathing now.
No, it's like I'm broken, right? Like a horse, right? Like
I see the argument.
Yeah. But I mean that's not a really compelling argument,
no,
right?
It's not. It's
but there's
a compelling argument for something. Now you're broken. Now let's train you for the Kentucky Derby. I mean, let's do something else now. You know,
but there is some. I'm just saying there is some utility to it.
Some, not much.
But I think even beyond that, just having this weekly ritual, like you could say like the fall just happens the same way every year, like this winter and spring, the seasons. So redundant, the sun comes up every morning. It's so redundant, I see the sunset coming down every night. Like there's something like about that regularity that there is something about that I find. If that's all there is, I agree with you. But we need to decorate it with beautiful, interesting
I'm just
diversity.
ready to do it. Let's
but we need to have a foundational system that we can rely on. I guess that's the.
I mean, whenever I used to actually give my testimony a lot, and I always tried to testify with different principles.
And so
I try to always avoid the trilogy of phrases. Vague repetition.
Right.
I always tried to
Right.
do something that, hey, that was something new.
Yeah,
some
I
novelty, something that I thought I could contribute. And when I felt I couldn't easily do that, I just stopped doing it. I haven't gone to give my testimony a long time.
Okay, let me put it a different way in terms of testimony.
I just dislike it.
Okay, let me put it in a different way in terms of testimony, right?
And I've heard rumors
Yeah.
from people that write about some of these other changes,
Yeah.
and we might get rid of it. So
testimony. Well, let me just give you a different analogy. Okay, so think about like poetry, right? Like, so you have a poetic form, and like you have to like have a rhyming pattern, a constant, like it's some of them are very rigid.
Yeah, right.
But you can still like in these rigid rules, you could still like
and that's where the art
put in a lot of. So you're in it kind of constrains you, but that constraining is almost liberating because then you can like in that constraint you can almost fly in that constraint, right? You can almost like so in the
and
constraint.
I suppose the best testimony should be this type of poems, if you will.
Yeah,
I'm just saying let's kind of train people to spruce it up so it doesn't become the beastly bore.
But you know what? The funny thing is when
the therapy and other stuff is still a value. I'm not saying it's not. Don't put that in front of everybody, especially a new investigator that's going to think you guys are idiots. Or,
no. But why is a group therapy?
Or why is this guy?
But why is a group therapy session so threatening? Like,
I just don't think it should be something paraded in front of potentially someone who's coming to church for the first time.
Because there's just not the relationship.
It's
but I heard
quality control as well. I mean, I guess I've had too many investigators when I was a missionary, and my second.
I don't care about that.
when guy gets up there prophesying about the return of polygamy, and everyone tunes him out, the bishop just is at a sling.
I think what I was trying to say.
But your investigator's going, what?
Well, to me, that's not therapy. That's just speculative.
Yeah. But there's someone who's talking. This is a friend of mine. He just finished his doctorate at Stanford, and he periodically visits. He's not active now, but he'll periodically visit his father's room. And his father is very much kind of a standard cut and dried Mesa conservative Mormon.
Yeah.
And there's a woman in his word who gets off and talks about the death of her children, stillborn. Yeah. And she talks about all the time where they are and goes on and on. And it's very unsettling. She does it all the time. And even his father kind of said, man, I'd be horrible for kids have to hear her say this story every single month. Right. And he's not a one to question or deconstruct Mormon social culture, criticize it, but even he found it, something that ought not to happen, the way it does in testimony meetings occasionally. And I'm grateful that Ballard did kind of address the quality of testimony meeting. My interest is given, like you said, the amateur aspect of you're no training, but hey, we don't train people. This is all authentic spiritual experience. Go up there and it's a train wreck. Doesn't matter. We don't care. We don't personally change anyone anyway. We don't care about quality, just authenticity. And
I just think
then outsource that. What do
you mean by outsourcing that?
We're putting so much stuff on the internet now. Have a mid-weekly thing. I mean, other Christian churches have Sunday schools on more elaborate stuff, and we think
so
they go to
it more of an optional.
Yeah, put it in the middle of the week somewhere.
I just remember like going traveling one year a long time ago in my marriage, where we stayed over at a hotel on our way home. I can give you more water.
Yeah,
let me pause.
I said,
we're okay. I mean, we can wrap this up soon, but I do want to talk a little bit more about this testimony thing because I was actually on the road trip, and we stopped over Saturday night. We got up, decided to go find the local ward to go attend sacrament, right? As you do as good Mormon family.
When you're traveling.
And it was a fast Sunday, and I just still remember this testimony of this lady. I don't know if she maybe just showed up for one day, but it was this huge confessional about her drug addiction and all this stuff. Yeah. And I just thought it was
more or less a therapy I complain about, but it was really well done, I suppose.
And it wasn't necessarily well done. I just thought that level of authenticity I found a lot more interesting than
I do too.
I just look how righteous I am. Look how strong.
The self-congratulation is the worst part of testimony. That's the main reason I want to get rid of it. The therapy is second, but maybe it's a distant section, the spiritual.
But I kind of like I think the authentic testimonies are the best ones, even if they are a bit of a train wreck. Yeah, I actually don't mind watching a train wreck. Right, those are actually pretty interesting to watch.
Well, I guess you can have fun about it, but my core experience just comes by new members or investigators. I just feel.
But why hide? Like that's the thing about missionary investigator. This is what the Mormon Church is. It's we have open mic once a month. I mean, okay, I guess
that's what it is. What is called open? Okay, fine. Call it open mic night, and maybe my problem is solved. But if they feel like this is an official part of LDS expression or group life, and you get this mixed bag, I just don't like the fact that a new or investigating member is exposed to that type of.
But I don't know why you would hide it. Yes. This is the church.
Yeah.
This is exactly what you're doing. This is really, if you really want to separate, if you really want a reason to join Mormonism over
any other Christian,
any other Protestant church, what sets us apart is really the amateur nature of it. Of that we're all doing this.
It's always a strength, but I guess it could.
But that's really what are these? No, I mean it's because we're all participating. Yeah. Like we all get a shot at this. Yeah.
Well, other churches are more congregations too. That's not completely unique to us.
Not completely unique, but it is it's if you had to say what sets us apart. I mean, there could be other churches that are doing similar things, but this is one of our unique features.
Yeah. Right? Well, then let's get the quality control. Maybe I'll read what Ballard says, and I'll say, that's the way to take it. Then if we're gonna keep it,
okay. All right,
and we can keep it in various ways. I just suggested one, just put in the middle of the week.
Yeah. All right, Nicholson. Let's stop it here.
All right. And that's a wrap.